I'm Christina Gerakiteys, co-CEO of Singularity U Australia and committed to making the seemingly impossible possible. Singularity U Australia stands at the intersection of the values of humanity with the value of technology. Inspire for Five is a place where we have conversations with inspirational entrepreneurs, community leaders, and representatives of organisations who are boldly creating a future by design. The good, the bad, the warts, and the inspiration. We are leading the way to be the change we want to see in the world. Conversations that bring to light the magic that is happening on a daily basis all over the globe. Today, we welcome to the Inspire for Five podcast, Jodi, Stanton and Mark Pay, who are co-founders and directors of Rush Gold. Welcome, Mark. Welcome, Jodi. Lovely to have you with us today.
Thank you for having us.
So, Rush Gold, what is the product? What is the company? And a little bit of the backstory before we get into your 5 points of inspiration.
Sure, very good. So Rush Gold, until December last year, we were known as SendGold. Is a company that enables people to buy, sell, send, and spend gold as though it were a regular form of money in the world, which it is, and it always has been. It's a platform company. We have a retail app that people listening to the podcast can very quickly, get the app and join the product. But we also are a platform company, which means that we enable other companies, third-party businesses, to use our open APIs in order to subscribe, include this product inside of their existing financial offer, or inside things like their game or their loyalty program. So we're really expanded the scope of what's possible to be done with gold. So you can buy in any quantity, you can sell instantly, get the funds returned to any bank account in the world. You can send gold as a payment or gift. So you have a niece that lives in the United States, you say, I want to give you $100 of gold. We have a nice little gift card that appears on the app. And then we've just launched a capability to spend, so that somebody could use gold as though it were their core currency, tap and pay at any merchant that accepts MasterCard. That's the top level view of what our product is.
It's quite remarkable, and how we're finding different formats, different currencies. Jodi, how did you two meet? How did you and Mark meet, and where were the synergies with creating this business?
Look, I spent many years in financial services. I'm a mathematician. My background is Wall Street. And I came to Australia with a consulting firm, and I ended up becoming a consultant on one end, a big end of town in financial services and technology. And the other end of town, I started investing 20 years ago in early stage, and ended up being a part of a number of private equity and VC funds over the years in Australia and in the US. I really love that space. It's just working with really high caliber, high performance entrepreneurs with really, really great ideas. Sometimes those two don't match up, but when they do, it's magic. And I certainly prefer that to the big end of town. And I was starting to see in 2010, I was trying to step back because I gave birth to my son, but I was seeing a lot of business plans very much around blockchain and distributed ledger technology. And Mark and I, he was referred to me by someone that we both knew, and we started talking about Bitcoin, and we got involved in it back then in 2010, 2011, when we first started talking.
That's fantastic. And it's interesting that you mentioned Bitcoin in light of Elon Musk's purchase, wanting to use Bitcoin to purchase Tesla, etc., as soon as possible, almost. So, which gets us into let's go into the 5 points of inspiration. And I know, Mark, that you touched on this anyway, but the product that you have, gold has been a commodity that has been traded throughout history. Tell us a bit about how you were inspired and how you came across the idea of using gold for the company.
That's a very interesting story. So there's a gentleman by the name of Bernard Lietaer. He's since passed away. He was the original architect of the euro currency, and he's probably was probably the foremost monetary scientist in the world. Jodi and I consulted with him. We may have formed a personal friendship. He really helped us understand the nature of money in the world. And so I think both Jodi and myself had been looking after the GFC to try to really understand, what went wrong there. And what were the kind of structural things that were continuing to go wrong? And you first look at investment, then you dig down under that and you look at banking, but then you really have to pry open and say, what's the nature of money? And how is money manufactured and how is it made? The more we started digging into that, the more I think Jodi and I personally understood the power of this rare, precious metal. So gold, depending on where you're from, I think if you're in Australia or the United States, you might think of it as there's this asset over there off to the side. You look at some of the countries of the world, certainly in Asia, and gold is a very central part of what they do. They understand that it is money that survives down through the ages. The government can come and go. There can be a war. At the end of any of that disruption, you still have this asset that is valuable. So really the question a lot of people ask us, I think, is why gold? And the answer is that it's proven. It's the most reliable investment asset there is, bar none. It's the only thing that has survived. The other thing it's done in terms of survival is that it holds its buying power. So if you were a citizen of Rome and you wanted to buy the best quality toga and the sandals and the belt and everything, it would cost you 1 ounce of gold. Well, 1 ounce of gold today is worth about $2,300 Australian. Well, you could buy a nice suit, a nice pair of shoes, and a nice belt. That's a remarkable history. That's over 2,000 years of human history where it's retained its buying power. Now, we see in a bank deposit or a bank cannot pay you really any substantial interest anymore. And things over time creep up in price. You need an asset that is going to hold its buying power. So that's kind of the why gold story. Now, the rest of why gold for us is that it was kind of clunky. There's a bar, it's in a vault, there's a guy, and so we said, why don't we digitize that physical asset? So for us, just to be clear, our customers are the individual outright owners of physical gold metal, full stop. So that's kind of the technology layer that we've put on top of this asset that has proven itself for so many years.
It's very much something that you can feel, see, hold, and you can admire its beauty, over and over again. Concept of ownership, because you mentioned, throughout history, people have been able to purchase it, exchange it, etc. The concept of ownership with gold. Can you tell me how that is a point of inspiration for you?
Yeah.
Really important. So going back in my early days, experiencing the Asian financial crisis, and my role as a financial engineer, in particular, we were going to court and providing expert testimony in regard to a trade. So, for example, J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs did a trade, and they're not sure which party owes the other party $500 million. And sometimes it came to that. And, we were wining and dining in the trade towers and our black tie apparel and patting ourselves on the back. But then things went belly up a little bit with long-term capital demise and what happened thereafter with hedge funds making bets on top of bets. Many of you have maybe seen the movie The Big Short or read the book, but a lot of bets were made by people who were able to make these bets when the fallout kind of happened to everyone underneath. And I just felt that was a real problem. And I saw the wealth gap as it was at the time. And I just thought, all these things in place, that wealth gap is going to get wider and wider and wider if we don't, do something about it. And at the time, I was going to work in a town car and happy days, right? So I took a 90% pay cut to come to Australia. Now, I was a part of that problem. I was there being a part of that, and I decided no longer. And so I walked away from that saying, you don't know, you don't understand all the layers of counterparty risk and all the layers and all the things that can go wrong unless you own direct title to the underlying asset. And so when we kind of said, well, what are the 5 things that it must be? You know, we must reduce counterparty risk as much as possible, and we must provide a real asset. And if you look at the world today, you know, so many things are virtual and digital, and we understand all that, and that's the the technology and where it's all leading. But it doesn't mean that you have to give up, you know, owning real things at the end of the day. And we think it's really important to own something real, and so that's, you know, a really important component of what we bring to the table.
I think that whole concept of ownership is a whole podcast, webinar, exercise, workshop in itself, particularly as we're looking into minimalism and all the things that people are going through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love to have maybe a full-on conversation with you both just about ownership. The third point of inspiration, I don't think it's an overused word, is empowerment. I find that we're very happy to use negative words like failure time and time and time again. When it comes to positive words like empowerment, we start believing that they're a little cliche instead of driving them into the psyche. I know empowerment has been a source of inspiration for you both. Tell us how and why.
Yeah, sure. So I like what you said about empowerment because it's constantly sort of under attack. So the individual versus the power of the big company or the power of the state or the power, the bigger powers. And so to us, it was about the ability for an individual to own and transact and manipulate and send and transfer themselves as individuals without the permission of some external party. So for example, with Rush.Gold, you can transfer from peer to peer. So I want to transfer owners. I want to give my nephew, you know, $500 of gold for his birthday. It's bing, 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 and it's simple and it's easy. I'm completely empowered to do that. We simply transfer ownership of this physical asset. So there's no third party that can come in and says, you may not do that. So the other part of empowerment has to do with access. And for us, that means access both when you want to initially buy gold, but also when you may want to receive the proceeds or use your gold to spend it out in the real world. And so access to us is, let's make sure people in all these different countries around the world using the type of banking, the type of payment products they have can access the product very simply and easily. We've taken a lot of time. So making something simple is not simple. And so it means that you have to put a lot of complexity behind let's say the app functions. And so empowering people also makes something that is easy to use. So I can log in very quickly. I can get what I've done, what I want to do very quickly. I can use it. I'm empowered. I own the thing. I'm empowered. They can't stop me. Peer to peer. That's kind of how we think about it. And so we don't need, so as I said, I think the individual nowadays has the corporations telling them what they may and may not do. It has governments telling them what they may and may not do. They're locked down. There's all these things that are pushing the individual power of individuals down. And we think this is a great way to reclaim some of that for yourself.
Yeah, I love the term empowerment and everything that it means. And you've made particular sense of it in what you're trying to do, the greater vision for Rush Gold. Real, not fake. So we've had lots of things in the news about fake news. What's a tangible product and intangible product? What is something that we can rely on? Certainty, uncertainty. Can you explain the realness versus fakeness when it comes to your company and your product?
Look, I think, I did touch on a little bit before. I don't want to overlap too much, but when I talked about ownership, having direct title to the underlying asset, again, was our mandate. And I just think that people these days don't necessarily know what they own. So we have a lot of competition out there in the market that look a tiny bit like us. And I think we're different in many ways. We all have our unique value propositions, but you can buy gold and never really own gold in many, many, many cases. And we get asked this a lot by a number of large customers. They want to get to the bottom of this right away. You can buy access to pooled gold. You can buy a security for a claim to gold. There are different ways. There are ETFs. You can buy or invest in indices that just track the price of gold. So there's a number of ways to own gold. You can also buy jewelry. Now that is very real. So on one hand, we've digitized access to gold, but make no mistake, it is that underlying direct title. And Australia has some of the strongest property rights in the world. So when we looked to do this, we said, okay, well, is it Hong Kong? Is it New York? Is it Singapore? Where would we look to do this? And Australia is really well positioned. By this time next year, we should be the #1 gold producer in the world. We are second to China right now. So by this time next year, I think we'll surpass China. So it is a natural asset for us. And so secondly, we have some of the strongest property rights, as I mentioned. So if you pull those two things together, we cannot just seize your gold away from you like you can in other countries. And so that's really important. So you have a right to that. You have that access and that property and that right, that legal right to that underlying asset. And so that's why we decided to stay in Australia.
It's interesting because until finding out about you, knowing about you, thinking more deeply about it, gold for me was an adornment. It was a piece of jewelry on many aspects, and trading, etc. Yes, but to think about what its value is and what its weight is, and how it can be used in transactions. Apart from taking jewelry to a pawn shop, isn't something that would necessarily cross my mind. Global. Go on.
Sorry, I'll just jump in there if you don't mind. So, and really, we've turned it into a current account. So instead of holding your money in a bank account, a lot of people are sitting on a lot of cash right now, not knowing quite what to do. And so really, we're providing a current account to the average Australian. And you can hold it in that account until you want to spend it. So the debit card that we launched is really interesting. So again, comparing us to some others in the market, and there are very few around that touch this at all. But we uniquely, I believe, we're the first to be able to spend on mobile wallets. So you can actually spend your gold on Apple Pay, Google Pay, and Samsung Pay, which I believe is a world first. But on top of that, we actually transfer the gold. It's a gold sale at the point of sale. It's not like you have to preload your card with cash and sell your gold previously, and it's a prepaid card. To the contrary, you hold your gold up until the moment that you spend it. We're actually doing a gold trade on your behalf as you're standing there in the merchant corridor. So that we're pretty excited about. But if you look at what's happening overseas, a lot of local currencies, as Mark's alluded to, they're volatile. They haven't maintained their purchasing power. So our big markets and our big growth, now we're quite popular here in Australia and do quite well, but our growth is really in Southeast Asia. It's in Africa. Even in the US, we have a lot of interest from the US, but China, India, and Southeast Asia, those are our markets. We're also in the Middle East. And so those are countries where local currencies have not always maintained their purchasing power, and they do understand the value of gold, and that's where our growth will come from.
I think it's really interesting too, as you say, there's a lot of people holding cash, but the return on investment on cash at the moment is extremely low. Even the interest rates, yes, are very low, but so is the return on the investment on cash.
And they're not going to increase anytime soon. Is the B side of that, so you're absolutely right.
So it makes what you're doing all the more attractive and all the more that it should be available to as many people as possible. So you touched on global then as well, Jodi, but let's just expand on what global means to gold, to you both, to Rush Gold. What's the next step globally for you?
Look, I think any company based in Australia needs to be thinking globally from the very beginning, and we've certainly done that. You know, we've got 25 million people here. That's a great market. We've right across the water in Indonesia, you've got 260 million people who absolutely love gold. And so we've thought about and designed our company to be global from the very beginning. I think we've all had the experience of transferring funds overseas. So you go, even with the modern fintech app, you go and you put the amount in, and then you sort of wait a day and a half or 2 days, and then, gee, maybe it arrived, and the amount, you know, the person has to walk down the hall with a piece of paper. It's remarkable how we have modern payment systems. We have a modern payment system here in Australia. We have one in the UK, but across border, things tend to break. Now, for us, I'll give you an example. We have a development team that's over in South Asia, and we pay them with gold. Their local currency they don't like, it's rubbish. We pay them with gold. That transfer happens within 10 seconds. So it opens up a world of possibility for international business. Gold has actually always been kind of an international currency. That's why the gold standard came up. You know, so you can go anywhere in the world. I can go to a village in a remote Thailand and ask somebody, do you want some gold? And they'll say, yes, please. They understand exactly what it is. It's universal. It's a single thing that's accepted and traded all over the world. The volumes of trading of gold are actually 25% more than the S&P 500 share market. It's incredibly deep, liquid market. So with that peer-to-peer transfer, you know, I mean, it's possible for us to be a global company based here in Australia. It's an online company, all digital. We sell, you know, in all the countries that we've launched in. I think we're in 13 countries now, a bunch of the other ones, you know, coming up soon. And then I mentioned earlier that we have a B2B2C model. So we have discussions underway with platform distributors across the Middle East, across Africa. We've got a really big one for Southeast Asia that's coming up. So it's exciting, right? It's an online product. We can do it based here in Australia. We'll be the world's largest producer of gold. We have these strong property rights, and now we have this digital solution that lets people use it as money again. Really exciting.
Part of our launch globally, I'll just jump in there, Mark, but part of our launch globally is we have another app called Gold Rush, for want of a better word, but it was inspired by Pokemon Go. And we all know about that phenomenon, which did very well with augmented reality. So we've tokenized gold. We've taken a page from Pokemon Go's book, and we've gone and launched our a year or two back, something called Gold Rush. So what that allows you to do is, through augmented reality, anywhere in the world, we can drop gold with a 4-hour notice. So we can put it in the UAE or Vietnam or Central Park or Hong Kong, and allow people to you know, walk around and actually look for gold. We can put it you know, vertically or horizontally. We could put it in someone's skyscraper building, or we can send it around a park or a beach. And so we are leveraging that to launch. We've not formally launched in the 13 countries. We are live in those 13 countries. And it's all been word of mouth. We haven't done a lot of marketing yet, but so those countries are kind of developing on their own. But we are getting ready to formally launch in a few of these, and we will leverage our Gold Rush to do that. And when they find gold, it's real gold that goes into their accounts, and you know, they could get $1,000 worth of gold for going out and having a walk. So that's kind of interesting to us as well.
I love that. I love the gamification aspect of it, and I love the adopt and adapt aspect as well. So adopting something from something that was as popular and as energized as Pokemon, and taking it into your own sphere. That's one of our favorite repurposing, I guess, of different ideas. Yeah. It's been extremely fascinating speaking with you both. I would love to catch up again and just share more information with our listeners. Potentially, we might even do a webinar, I think, on this topic, because it is such an engaging topic. It is somewhere where finances and currencies are moving toward into the future. I am totally inspired by you both. Thank you for sharing your information and your knowledge with us today.
Thank you very much for having us. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, I look forward to speaking with you both again very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inspire for 5, the Singularity U Australia podcast. We look forward to your company again on the next podcast. And in the meantime, we'd like to give a big shout out to our founding partner, Deloitte.